I'll see this through. 여기는 쓰던 무기 그 중에서도
어떻게 생각?
아이고.
와 여기 지금 힐 들고 있어. 저거 남.
Is, but I know if I'm not wrong, you need tons of life skill mats, guys. Like life skill mat, what I mean is like these stuff. Yeah, like tons of these, tons of these, tons of these, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's what I know, and this also requires a lot of gold. Yeah, a lot of gold. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is, of course, the Esther essence, right? It requires 10, 20, that's 20, 25, 27, 28. So to make it usable, you need 28 Esther essence, guys. 28. Well, hopefully, you can get it as a whole free-to-play. It says it requires 28, but you can get 3 from here by clearing Gate 6 hard mode 10 times. Okay, so you only need 25 from here, which means you need 2,500 of the bro mat. So let's say 2,500. The Gate 6 hard mode essence, right? It requires 10, 20, that's 20, 25, 27, 28. So to make it usable, you need 28 Esther essence, guys. 28. Well, hopefully, you can get it as a whole free-to-play. It says it requires 28, but you can get 3 from here by clearing Gate 6 hard mode 10 times. Okay, so you only need 25 from here, which means you need 2,500 of the bro mat. So let's say 2,500 divided by how much bro mats do you get every week? Let's say you clear every week from 1 to 6. And also you win the bid as well, let's say. Then that is 59, guys. 59 bro mats you can get. So let's divide it by 59 then. Then it... And also you win the bid as well, let's say. Every week from 1 to 6. And also, let's say you clear... how much bro mats do you get every week? Let's say you clear every week from 1 to 6. And also you win the bid as well, let's say. Then that is 59, guys. 59 bro mats you can get. So let's divide it by 59 then. then it takes at least 43 weeks, guys. How long is 43 weeks? 4 weeks is like 1 month. So this is like at least 10 months, chat. Like 11 months. It's around 1 year. So if you're down with that, then as a complete free-to-play player, you might be able to get the Esther weapon actually usable as a complete free-to-play. But I cannot like guarantee that that will happen in the near future, guys, because if you see here, the grade over, guys, the grade higher than the +5, it requires 20 more, guys. 20 more for 1625 level, 20 more for 1635, 30 more for 1645. So once you're committed to Esther weapon, you have to just go all the way to the Esther weapon. You can, because you cannot like try to run something else like, oh, it's super costly from here. Maybe I should just run a normal, you know, weapon +25. Like, it's hard to do that, guys. You know what I'm saying, right? It's really hard to do that. You already committed on your Esther weapon up to here. Like, how are you gonna hone all the way to here, guys, for the normal weapon? And also, if you think about the future, this is not feasible as a free-to-play player because it requires tons of, you know, Esther mats. And even though the Archon mats gives you 30 more, if you roughly calculate the things out, so these only give 60, and this gives 3, so that's 63 in total. And this, look at how much this requires, guys. 30, 50, 70, 80, 90, 98, guys. You need 35 of them as a pay to win. Yeah, and how much was it, guys? How much was it? In KR, this is, as I told you, 400k gold. What is 400k times 35, guys? $14 million gold. Oh, wow. Yeah. And for the West, this is more expensive, so it's much more than this. Alright, so... Summary. Yeah, that was like long turnaround, but summary. This is the reason why Esther weapon is a hardcore pay to win. And number 2, for those who are actually trying to aim this weapon as a complete free-to-play player, I do not recommend it, guys. As you saw, it most likely is not gonna be feasible. Yeah, if you think of the future as well. And also the time that it takes. So, hope this helped you guys a lot of not going for Esther weapon unless you're an Omega Giga Whale. Stay Giga Ched. Spam loaded, guys.
I admire your persistence, but as long as I stay around, you're doomed. Do not dare think this is over. darkness consumes you.
By year 2154, humanity has left Earth in an absolutely calamitous state, a consequence of overpopulation, disease, and contamination. The elite class decides to build a space station called Elysium and live without pollution or illnesses thanks to special pods that can heal anything. Now Earth is only inhabited by the poor, like Orphan Max and his best friend Frey. They spend lots of time together and enjoy looking at books about Elysium, to the point where Max promises Frey one day he'll take her there. Max begins to steal in order to save money for tickets to Elysium, no matter how many times the nun in charge of the orphanage asks him to stop. Many years later in Los Angeles, Max is a former thief on probation, trying his best to work an honest job at the factory. But even when he's well behaved, Officer Robots stop him at the bus station to check his backpack just because of his criminal history. Max answers them with a joke, causing the robots to push him to the ground and hurt his arm. After the robots find nothing in his bag and let him go, Max goes to the hospital and is shocked to find Frey, who he hasn't seen in a while. While Frey takes care of his arm, they take the chance to catch up and Max asks her out on a date. Frey accepts after some hesitation. Afterward, Max goes to work at Armadyne, the company that built Elysium and now makes robots, owned by billionaire Carlyle. Max's manager tries to fire him for arriving late, and Max explains he had an accident. He gets to keep his job, yet he still gets a warning. Meanwhile, a group of rebels led by hacker Spider are giving people fake IDs and getting them into shuttles to try to reach Elysium to get medical care. In the station, Defense Secretary Delacourt receives a message warning her of 3 incoming undocumented shuttles approaching Elysium, and she rushes back to her office to take action. The shuttles are told to go back to Earth, but they won't listen, so Delacourt orders to activate Kruger, a sleeping agent she's hidden on Earth. This is against the law, but Delacourt doesn't care. Kruger arms himself with a missile launcher and manages to take down 2 shuttles before they reach the station. The third one dodges the missile and does land on Elysium, allowing a woman to run out and break into a house. She puts her sick daughter in a healing pod and the girl immediately gets healthy, but at that moment a bunch of robot cops show up and aggressively arrest them both to send them to Earth. Back to Max. On his way home he bumps into his friend Julio, who once helped stealing some cars, but Max turns him down because he doesn't want to go to jail again. The next day at work, Max discovers an object has jammed the door to the radioactive room. His manager makes him go inside to fix it, and Max has to obey if he doesn't want to lose his job. Removing the object turns out to be quickly, but this causes the door to close and the machine begins working again. His co-workers try to force open the door, but they aren't quick enough and Max squirms in pain as he's exposed to a huge dose of radiation. When they finally manage to free him, Max is sent to the company's medical bay and a robot tells him he'll die in 5 days, but he can take some pills to function until then. Carlyle shows up when he hears production stopped and orders the manager to fire Max. In the meantime, Delacourt is called to an audience by President Patel to call her out for violating the law when she used a sleeper agent and killed 46 civilians. Delacourt explains she'll do whatever is necessary to protect their home and their families from savages, which makes Patel warn her that if she does something like this again, she'll be fired. Sometime later, Carlyle meets with Delacourt to renew the defense contracts for the space station. Delacourt wonders if Carlyle can override Elysium's system and put a new president in power. When Carlyle confirms he can, Delacourt offers a 200-year contract if he puts her in power, and he accepts. At the hospital, Frey is devastated to hear that her patient Matilda can't be cured and she must be sent home. Meanwhile, Max tries to get to his house, but he's feeling too sick and Julio has to help him move. After throwing up, Max tells Julio what happened and asks him to take him to Spider. Max wants to buy tickets to go to Elysium, and since he doesn't have the money, he offers to do anything Spider needs. Spider actually has a dangerous mission that nobody wanted to take. He's created a device that can access organic information from a person's brain and transfer it to another. The mission would entail Max finding a billionaire and getting all their access data so they can empty their bank accounts. Max accepts as long as Julio gets a ticket too and if his target is Carlyle. Spider accepts those conditions and offers Max an exoskeleton suit that can make him as powerful as a robot and will make up for the weakness caused by the radiation. The operation to fuse the exoskeleton to Max's bones and nervous system is long and complicated, but it ends successfully, and now Max can fight any robot that dares to stop him. Max also gets an ID tattoo on his arm that will make the system think he was born in Elysium. Back to Carlyle, he's encrypting his cerebral information, putting up a defense mechanism that will kill anyone that tries to access his mind and destroying his computer when he's done. Then he gets ready to take his shuttle to leave for the station. At the same time, Max and his group show up at Carlyle's facility to capture him. Max shoots at the shuttle when it takes off, causing it to start failing and eventually crash. At Elysium, Delore is keeping an eye on Carlyle for the sake of her own future and discovers this attack, so she sends Kruger in a military ship to defend him. The group approaches the crashed shuttle and finds robots ready to defend Carlisle. Max destroys one by shooting it, and he engages the other one in hand-to-hand combat, defeating it by tearing off its head. Then they enter the shuttle and start downloading the information from Carlisle's brain, only to find all the data is messed up. At that moment the military ship shows up, and the group decides to run. Suddenly Max's head starts hurting, delaying everyone and giving time for Kruger to catch up and kill most of them. Max and Julio try to escape in a car, but the vehicle is hit with explosives and gets flipped over. Kruger approaches Max when he crawls out and stabs him with a knife, then gets a sword in order to finish off. However, Julio stops him by trying to shoot him. His shots fail, but Kruger is furious anyway and kills Julio first. Max uses this distraction to retrieve a gun and try shoot Kruger too, but Kruger puts up an energy shield and falls unconscious instead of dying. After taking a short moment to mourn for Julio, Max runs away. Meanwhile, Delacourt finds out Carlisle died from blood loss, and as soon as Kruger wakes up, she sends him after Max. Kruger and his men analyze the crashed shuttle and discover that Carlisle had Elysium's system reboot program in his mind, and now that info is in Max, so they send droids to help with the search. To make matters worse, Delacourt declares Los Angeles a no-fly zone, and Spider finds all signals are jammed in the city. In the evening, Frey is getting ready to take Matilda home, and as soon as she walks outside she finds Max asking her for help with the stab wound. Frey wants to take him inside the hospital, but Max explains he's a wanted man so public spaces are a no. The next morning, Max wakes up in Frey's house with his wound patched up. He discovers Matilda is Frey's daughter and she suffers from leukemia, so she doesn't have much time left. Frey notices Max's ID tattoo and asks for help getting Matilda into Elysium, but Max explains they'll get killed if they even try. Then Max leaves the building, only to be found by a robot. He begins running away and tries throwing a few things at it, managing to disable it. However, all of this was still transmitted to Kruger, who immediately flies to the location. He bursts into Frey's apartment and arrests her and Matilda for housing a criminal. Max makes it back to Spider's hideout and demands his ticket to Elysium. Spider explains he can't send shuttles with the signals jammed, but he also points out that Max must have something really important in his mind for the government to activate the jamming. He takes a look at the data and discovers Elysium's reboot program, which they could use to do a huge impact on society. However, Max points out he only has a few hours left to live, so he'll use the data as a bribe in exchange for a ticket. Then Max returns to the robot that chased him to taunt Kruger into coming after him. Kruger shows up and finds Max threatening to detonate a grenade if anyone tries something, which would kill him and therefore the important data. Kruger accepts to take him to Elysium, and when Max enters the shuttle, he discovers Frey and Matilda are there too. Kruger lets Delacourt know he is Max, thus Delacourt disables the jamming so they can fly him over. Spider immediately gets his systems back online and begins tracking Max through his exoskeleton. As soon as they notice he's going to Elysium, the rebels get their weapons and board their shuttles. Sometime later, Kruger's shuttle is almost at Elysium. Max tries to apologize to Frey for getting her involved, but at that moment Kruger and his companion attack Max, and the fight causes the pilot to lose control of the ship. Max accidentally drops his grenade and it explodes, hurting Kruger's face and taking out the ship's engine. The shuttle crashes in the suburbs and the security cameras warn Delacourt, who sends her people to arrest everyone on that ship. When Max regains consciousness and finds Frey stuck in her seat, so he uses his new strength to help her out. Kruger and his companion also wake up and begin fighting Max. Frey uses the chance to grab Matilda and take her inside a house to put her inside a healing pod, but the machine has been changed and now they don't work if you don't have a citizen ID. At that moment the guards arrive and tase Max and Frey. The next time Max wakes up, he finds Delacourt and a bunch of technicians checking on Carlisle's data. The information is fine, but Max will die if they try to extract it. Delacourt doesn't care and tells them to do it anyway. While the rebels arrive at Elysium and go looking for Max, Kruger's men lock up Frey and Matilda. Kruger himself is barely alive, so he's put through a procedure that both heals him and gets him an exoskeleton like Max's. Moments later, Max manages to get loose and hits the technicians to make them confess Frey's location. He also takes their access cards. Delacourt shows up to furiously scold Kruger for not handling the mission properly, but Kruger responds by stabbing her and locking her with Frey. While Frey tries to take care of Delacourt's wound, Kruger orders his men to get rid of every politician in the building while he looks for Max. The men jump into action and kill every politician they can find by using grenades. When Max finds the control room, the whole place is a mess. The monitors show him Frey and Matilda in the building, plus the rebels getting closer. Using a communicator, Max gets in contact with Spider and asks him if the program in his head can make everyone a citizen. Spider confirms it can, and together they make a plan. Afterward Max goes looking for Frey and finds Kruger's thug in the room. A fierce fight begins and Max gets the upper hand, managing to beat Kruger's man up to death. The other thug shows up too and shoots at Max, but Max easily retrieves a heavy gun and shoots him back. Afterward, Max takes the girls to the elevator and tells them to find a healing pod. Frey points out the lack of ID, but Max promises he will take care of that and sends them away. At that moment, Max hears Kruger yelling nearby, meaning he's still alive. The door opens and Max gets ready to fight, but it's just Spider and his group. A man is sent to help Frey and Matilda while Max and the rebels go to Elysium's system room, only to be found by Kruger, who starts killing anyone he can get his hands on. Max and Spider run away and try closing a door behind them, but Kruger blocks them. Suddenly Max's head starts hurting again, giving Kruger the opportunity to get through and attack. Max fights back and Spider tries to help, causing Kruger to drop his sword off the platform. Kruger retaliates by stabbing Spider's hand with a knife, then goes after Max again. As the two of them continue to fight, Spider removes the knife from his hand and rushes to hack the door to the system room. Kruger overpowers Max and stabs him as he teases him for disappointing a child. This makes Max furious and jumps on Kruger to tear off his exoskeleton. Without the machine's support, now Kruger can't defend himself from Max's robot strength and thinks of using a grenade to bring them both down. Max reacts quickly and frees himself from Kruger's hold before throwing him off the platform. At that moment Spider opens the door, and as soon as he and Max get inside, Spider locks it again to leave the incoming guards outside. While Frey finds the pod and puts Matilda inside, Max connects his brain to Elysium's system. Spider does all the necessary programming, then gives Max a remote control to trigger the reboot, explaining that Max won't survive if he chooses to press the button. Max uses the computer he's connected to in order to contact Frey, apologizing for not being able to be with her but also pointing out he kept his promise from their childhood and brought her to Elysium. Max begins remembering all his happy memories with Frey as kids as he presses the button. While Patel arrives with more guards to break down the door and arrest Spider, the system reboots, leaving the ship with no power for a few seconds. When it activates again, the system adds new citizens to the database. The healing pod reads Matilda as a legit patient and begins curing her while the robots refuse to arrest Spider because arresting Elysium citizens is against the law. Now that everyone on Earth also counts as an Elysium citizen, the system detects all the poor people in need of medical attention, so they send down shuttles to help them. While everyone in the slums runs to the ships to meet their salvation, Frey comes outside and looks at Earth and sky, thinking of all the wonderful memories Max left her. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
An average man gets stuck alone on the moon's space station as asteroids hit Earth. As the only survivor left, he finds ways to diverge from his loneliness, unaware that things aren't what he thinks. Yue goes to a job interview to be an engineer at the moon's space station despite his average records, justifying that he intentionally built himself to be mediocre. The interviewer hires him as maintenance personnel instead, and he soon finds himself in a rocket to the moon. Mars's gravitational pull ceases, and one of its asteroids, Pi, turns its course to Earth. To prevent the disaster, people created the United Nations Moon Shield, or UNMS project, to use the moon as Earth's shield. They fortify the moon's space station, create a helium-3 superweapon called Cosmic Striking Hammer to destroy Pi, and use the moon's gravitational pull to attract the
and get out.
In the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, Kirsty is taught by her father how to swim. He also tells them about the freedom they could possibly find in America, and Kirsty dreams of going there someday. Years pass, and the father dies of cancer. Kirsty lives with her sister Annie and her mother Mary, and together they take care of the farm. To carry his dad's memory with her, Kirsty always wears his cross necklace. One afternoon, the sisters are invited to the road dance, a gathering the village often organizes to have some fun at the end of the day. Mary allows them to go, and on their way there, the sisters are warned by old Peggy to be careful when it comes to boys, who are taking more and more interest in them now that they've become ladies. At the party, the boys are teasing Murdo, who is serving the country as a messenger between units in Glasgow. Murdo has a deep love for books and prefers them rather than socializing, which is why the others like to make fun of him. When Murdo finally gets his tormentors off his back, he finds a quiet place where he can read in peace, and Kirsty follows him to spend some time with him. It turns out they're having an affair that they're keeping secret because they aren't married yet, but Murdo promises he'll give Kirsty the life in America she's always wanted someday. Their little meeting is cut short when they see old Skipper hanging around, so they decide to leave not to be found. The next Sunday after attending Mass, Kirsty takes Murdo to the beach where her father used to take her swimming and learns that Murdo's own father never made it back after a fishing accident. Murdo never learned how to swim, thus Kirsty promises to teach him one day. That afternoon, the lovebirds have their first kiss. The next day, Mary scolds her daughter for coming home late, to which Kirsty replies with a lie about losing track while reading. Annie finds it suspicious, but before she can say anything, Mary sends Kirsty to deliver eggs to Skipper, who Kirsty thinks is a weirdo. In the evening, Annie guesses Kirsty had something great happen to her, and after she swears she won't tell their mother, Kirsty decides to share with her little sister what kissing a boy feels like. Sometime later, the villager receives an official announcement calling for all the young men to join the army, which is obligatory. Afterward, Murdo meets Kirsty at the beach so she can finally teach him to swim, using the same technique her father taught her. Once their little date is over, Murdo finally tells Kirsty he's been called to fight in the front lines, which breaks Kirsty's heart. To try to cheer her up at least a little, Murdo promises he'll come back when the war is over and he'll marry Kirsty to then take her to America. In the evening, the village throws another road dance to say goodbye to the guys. Kirsty wears a beautiful dress Mary gifts her and used to wear when she was courting her father. Then Murdo comes to pick Kirsty up, bringing flowers with him, which makes their relationship public. At the gathering, everyone has lots of fun dancing, chatting, and drinking a lot. By the time night falls, most people are drunk, and a boy that likes Kirsty gets jealous of Murdo, causing him to harass her for a while and punch Murdo when he tries to defend her. Fortunately, he's just fine, so when Kirsty needs to relieve herself, she doesn't hesitate to leave him alone for a few minutes while she goes to the hills. While she's doing her thing, a mysterious man surprises her from behind and hits her head on the rocks before taking advantage of her. Kirsty is bleeding, and because her face is pushed against the ground, she doesn't get to see who the man is before she passes out. A few hours pass, and when Kirsty doesn't come back, Murdo goes looking for her and finds her on the hills, so he wakes her up as soon as he notices the blood, but Kirsty only tells him that she fell. Murdo immediately takes her to see Dr. McLean, who takes her in and gives her some medicine plus stitches for her wound while Murdo runs to tell her family. McLean notices Kirsty has pain in her lower regions, but when she insists that she fell and doesn't remember anything else, McLean lets her rest for the night. The next morning, Murdo takes Kirsty to her family so she can be taken care of, and when Kirsty is finally alone in her room, she checks her underwear, breaking into tears when she sees the blood that confirms what happened last night. Desperate not to be found out, she throws her pad into the fire. Later, Kirsty joins the rest of the village to say goodbye to the boys. Murdo reminds his brother to take good care of their mom before giving Kirsty a book with his favorite quotes. He also gives her enough money to take a ship to America in case he doesn't make it back. In return, Kirsty gives him her father's necklace, but she refuses to kiss him because she still feels dirty. After all the boys leave with a blessing from the priest, Kirsty goes back to the hills where everything happened and privately has a full breakdown, unaware that Skipper is watching from afar. That night, Kirsty has nightmares of the attack, and Mary has to wake her up to stop all the screaming. The next morning, Constable McCrae comes to check on Kirsty because Peggy had been worried about her, but once again Kirsty promises it had been just a fall and nothing else. Weeks begin to pass, and Kirsty keeps track of her monthlies, or lack of, in a notebook until eventually she has to face the truth. She's pregnant. She doesn't tell anybody though because she still doesn't want to bring shame to the family and miss her chance to marry Murdo, who writes to her as often as he can. His letters are the only comfort Kirsty has nowadays. One morning, she brings another delivery to Skipper, who in return gives her some flowers for her and her mother. Kirsty finds the gesture very sweet and notices Skipper has a picture of America, prompting him to share some stories of his travels. This makes Kirsty admit she's been misjudging Skipper all along. As the baby grows, Kirsty begins having the usual pregnancy troubles, like wanting to throw up at random times. One time this happens when she's in town, and Peggy begins getting suspicious. When it happens at home, Mary and Annie worry about her, but Kirsty just blames it on a stomach bug and brushes them off rather coldly. When her belly begins to grow, Kirsty hides it by wrapping some cloth around her abdomen and wearing baggy clothes, which is rather painful and makes her extra hot. Kirsty also begins sleeping more and waking up in awful moods, which gets her scolded by her mother often. One evening, Mary invites Dr. McLean for dinner to thank him for taking good care of Kirsty, and they get to hear the story of his failed marriage. The doctor's wife left him after he went bankrupt for offering his services to the poor. Some days later, Kirsty overhears the mailman saying the army is starting to think they'll need to get the women's help too. He also brings a telegram for the neighbors saying their son died in battle. Desperate to help her country so the same doesn't happen to Murdo, Kirsty drags Annie with her to ask Peggy to start a group of knitters, since the army takes donations of all kinds of garments. Peggy is happy to teach all the girls in town, but she can't help wondering why Kirsty keeps wearing such a thick big coat. To avoid answering the question, Kirsty says she isn't feeling well and flees to the hills, where she takes off the binding cloth to get some relief from the pain and takes the chance to read Murdo's latest letter. Her reading is suddenly interrupted by Annie, who expresses worry for her sister after finding the binding cloth on the ground. Since Annie won't stop begging for an explanation for Kirsty's weird moods, Kirsty makes her promise she won't tell anyone and finally confesses she's pregnant. Annie stays supportive and assumes Murdo is the father, but Kirsty doesn't correct her. Some days later, one of the boys returns to the village because he lost an arm and couldn't be a soldier anymore. He also brings bad news: Murdo has disappeared. In the middle of a battle, he went against enemy fire to save 2 of his friends, but he never came back. Kirsty thinks he could still be alive, but then she's given the cross necklace the boys found on the ground, which destroys any hope she had, causing her to break into tears. Later at home, Mary is comforting Kirsty while she cries and notices her big belly, finally learning the truth. She also believes the father is Murdo, and when she discusses the matter with Annie, she agrees she won't tell anyone in the village either. The next morning, Mary tells Kirsty that she knows about the baby and considers the option of leaving the village with her daughters. When she brings up Murdo, Kirsty quickly corrects her and tells her about the attack, apologizing in tears. This doesn't change Mary's mind. She stays supportive of her daughter and tells her she did nothing wrong. Kirsty also explains Dr. McLean knows she was attacked but not about the pregnancy, so maybe they should go to him. But Mary refuses because then the whole village will know and they'll treat her badly. Their argument is suddenly interrupted when Kirsty's water breaks 2 months before even approaching the right date. To make matters worse, at that moment the local priest comes to the house to offer some prayers for Murdo's death, but Mary quickly sends him away saying Kirsty is sleeping and needs to rest after hearing the bad news. Afterward, Mary and Annie help Kirsty give birth right there on the bedroom floor, which is a very painful experience for Kirsty, but by the end of it she's eager to hold her child. At first Mary doesn't want to hand the boy to her because she doesn't want Kirsty to get too attached. The plan is to send the baby away so he can have a good life away from judging villagers. But Kirsty continues to cry and beg, thus Mary gives in and allows her to hold the baby for just a moment before taking him away from the night. Kirsty wants to keep the boy, but Mary reminds her that for now she needs to rest and they can discuss things in the morning. After Kirsty falls asleep, Mary takes care of the baby, but he won't drink milk and he looks extremely pale, most likely because he was born early. Annie doesn't want the baby to go, and Mary explains she would love to keep him too, but the boy deserves to have a good life if he survives the night at all. Kirsty, who had only been pretending to be asleep, overhears all this and waits for her family to fall asleep to take the baby and leave the house in the middle of the night, intending to take him to the doctor. Unfortunately, Mary had been right and the baby dies while Kirsty is still crossing the hills. When Kirsty notices, she apologizes in tears and puts her necklace inside the baby's clothes before deciding to end things because she feels guilty for the baby's death. At that moment, Annie and Mary arrive, but it's too late. The baby is taken away by the waves and Kirsty almost drowns. As she begins remembering her father's swimming lessons, Annie appears in the water and helps her sister out. In the morning, Skipper finds the baby on the shore and tells McCrae, who immediately goes to see the doctor to ask him if he knew of any pregnant women in the village. McLean responds he doesn't, and when McCrae remembers the weird circumstances around Kirsty's supposed fall months ago, McCrae sticks to his story. Still unconvinced, McCrae takes the doctor to Mary's home and makes him check on Kirsty to be sure she hadn't been birthed. Luckily the constable stays outside the room, so McLean tells the family he's on their side and does the corresponding checkup while whispering to Kirsty that she can trust him. This makes Kirsty uncomfortable, but she isn't sure why. Once the checkup is done, the doctor lies to McCrae and tells him Kirsty is still pure. McCrae leaves the family alone for now, but he's still suspicious of how weird everyone was behaving in that house, so he promises to get a second opinion. All this is overheard by Peggy from behind her window. The next Sunday during Mass, McLean secretly informs Mary of the doctor from the city that will be coming later to check on Kirsty again. By the time McCrae shows up with the new medic, Mary is ready, since once again the constable will be waiting outside. Annie pretends to be Kirsty, and the doctor reports to McCrae that everything is fine here. McCrae is furious over the lack of proof, so McLean tells him to get over it. The baby was probably stillborn and the water must have brought him from another village. This is also overheard by Peggy. All this time, Kirsty can't sleep well because she feels responsible for the baby's death, no matter how many times Annie reminds her that it hadn't been her fault. The flashbacks of the attack also keep appearing in her nightmares, and one morning, she has a realization that makes her finally leave her home. She goes to see Dr. McLean and accuses him of being her attacker. At first he plays dumb, but he can't deny it anymore when Kirsty explains that when he whispered to her at home, she recognized the smell of the whiskey in his breath, which matched the attacker's. Kirsty calls him a sick man and swears to never forgive him, leaving it in the hands of God to judge. At that moment, Constable McCrae shows up and Kirsty leaves in a hurry, ignoring the doctor's pleas to hear him out. McCrae finds this very suspicious and rushes inside the doctor's house when he hears a gunshot while Kirsty goes home in tears, getting the attention of everyone in the village including Peggy and Skipper. Once she gets home, Kirsty tells her family that the doctor did it, but before they can discuss things further, McCrae bursts in and announces McLean is dead. He used his own gun to end things. He wants to accuse Kirsty of many crimes and calls her out for her forbidden affairs with men, but Mary immediately comes in her defense, explaining McLean attacked her and that a secret dark past would explain why a supposedly great doctor suddenly came to this village in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly Peggy shows up as well and sends McCrae away with fury, pointing out McLean had a choice but Kirsty hadn't. Knowing he can't go against the village's elder, McCrae drops the subject and leaves the family to comfort each other. A year later, Kirsty finally feels well enough to leave for America with the ship money Murdo had left her. The whole village comes to say goodbye to her, and Skipper takes the chance to give her back her necklace, which he rescued from the baby before he was buried. Weeks later, Kirsty is living in New York at peace when suddenly someone knocks at the door. To her shock, it's Murdo himself. It turns out the Germans had found him and kept him as a prisoner until the war ended, and when he returned home, Mary told him everything that happened. Murdo apologizes for not having been there for Kirsty, but he's ready for them to start a new life now, and the couple finally gets to kiss again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
I am the robot. Hear me roar. Roar.
Let's make this fun. Do we have to?
Get paid and get out. Here's where I get my
what they're up against.
I'm gonna throw a curveball at you.
Oh, sure.
During Dragonlance, we got a little sneak peek. We got a little hint. Are you willing to part with that treasured information? Anything we can hear about the magical Set 9? I've heard it's amazing.
So what I'll say, and I have to keep this pretty vague for now.
Excellent. We love vague things. Yes.
Is that Monsters Attack is kind of the last set in our minds before our team got really big. The team has been growing a lot. We've been able to accomplish a lot more. And so I think you're going to see a shift in set development where Monsters Attack was kind of the end of an era, and the next set is the beginning of a new era where it's amazing what we can do with a lot more people. So.
Clip it, Reddit. Clip it. Love to
Send
hear
it
that.
off.
most of the work. I just swing it. You're back. I was waiting for you. There are matters that need your approval. You can go check them in the office.
Just give me a reason to keep my heart beating. Don't worry, it's safe right here in my arms. As the world falls apart around us, all we can do is hold on, hold on. Take my
In 1929, two sisters, Chiyo and Satsu, are sold by their poor father and taken to Kyoto. Once they reach the city, Chiyo is sold again to an okiya, an establishment where geisha live and are booked, but Satsu is considered not pretty enough and is sold to a bawdy house. In the okiya, Chiyo meets the ladies in charge, Granny, Auntie, and the leader mother, whose attention immediately goes to Chiyo's blue eyes. After being inspected, Chiyo is locked in her new room with another girl called Pumpkin, who quickly tells her to stop yelling about her sister or she'll be hit with a stick. Pumpkin also explains that if Chiyo behaves, she may be chosen to go to geisha school one day. The next day, Chiyo begins to work on chores with Pumpkin. Chiyo gets a little upset when she learns they aren't allowed to leave the building, but she doesn't mind gossiping with her new friend. This is how she learns that this okiya's geisha likes to sneak around with a man, which isn't allowed. This geisha is Hatsumomo, who shows up to tell them to keep it quiet. She also notices Chiyo's eyes and tells her to stay out of her room because she stinks. Later, Chiyo learns that mother only puts up with Hatsumomo because she brings in good money. It's thanks to her that Chiyo is being fed. The kimonos she wears, though, are still not hers. They're extremely expensive and belong to the okiya. Chiyo works hard and well, getting mother to send her to geisha school with Pumpkin. This is the first time she leaves the house since she's arrived, so Chiyo wants to try to go looking for her sister, but Pumpkin doesn't let her because it could get them in trouble. At school, she learns various skills that geishas must know for their profession, like dancing and hosting. One afternoon, Chiyo is ordered to tidy up Hatsumomo's room, who she just saw getting busy with a boy in secret. Since the order comes from the house ladies, Chiyo can't ignore it, so when Hatsumomo finds her touching her things, she gets angry. As revenge, she tells Chiyo she knows where her sister is but denies telling her until Chiyo swears herself to her. In the evening, Hatsumomo comes back to the okiya with a fellow geisha friend. They're both quite tipsy and looking over an expensive kimono they've paid a maid to steal from Mama, one of the district's most prominent geisha. Hatsumomo makes Chiyo ruin the kimono with ink before taking it back to Mama as a prank. Chiyo is supposed to sneak around, but she fails and gets caught, which earns her a beating with the stick and a bigger debt with the okiya because mother had to pay for the kimono. Afterward, Hatsumomo finds her and scolds her for failing, but Chiyo points out she's kept her promise, so Hatsumomo finally tells her where Satsu is working. She pretends she does it as a favor, but actually, she sees Chiyo as potential competition and is trying to find a way to get her to leave. A few evenings later, Chiyo walks with Hatsumomo to her next appointment to keep the umbrella up for her under the rain. Instead of waiting for her until she's done though, she runs to the red light district to find her sister. Satsu is happy to see her and explains she went to the okiya looking for her but she was kicked out, so Chiyo explains nobody ever told her. She wants to run away tonight, but Satsu needs to steal some money first. They agree to meet the following night at the bridge, but Chiyo isn't sure she'll be able to make it. Satsu confesses she's already waited enough, and if Chiyo doesn't show up, she'll run away alone. Chiyo returns to the okiya and finds Hatsumomo getting busy with her secret boyfriend, causing Hatsumomo to send him away before they're found. Mother still hears noises and comes out, and Hatsumomo says she's caught Chiyo lying again. As mother begins beating her up, Chiyo realizes she doesn't owe Hatsumomo anything anymore and tells mother what she saw early. Furious, mother inspects Hatsumomo's and confirms Chiyo's story is real, so she slaps her and forbids her from seeing the boy again because geishas aren't free to love. She also orders to bolt all doors. Now nobody can leave the building without her knowing. The following night, Chiyo decides to climb the roofs to try to escape in order to meet with her sister, but she falls and gets severely injured. Satsu escapes on her own and Chiyo never sees her again. To make matters worse, news arrives that Chiyo's parents have died, and the doctor's bill has been added to her debt. Mother decides to stop investing in Chiyo's geisha training and keeps her as a mere servant instead so she can pay the okiya back. One afternoon, Chiyo stops by the bridge to think about how bad her life has gone. That's when she's found by Chairman Ken, who doesn't like seeing a cute little girl sad and buys her a shaved ice dessert to make her smile. After admiring her eyes, Ken gives her some money inside his handkerchief before leaving, and Chiyo can't help noticing he's keeping two geishas as company. It's then that Chiyo finally finds purpose in her life. She swears to become a geisha so one day she can see Ken again. She uses the money he gave her at the temple to make a wish, and she saves the handkerchief as a memory of this special meeting. Many years later, Pumpkin debuts as a geisha under Hatsumomo's tutelage while Chiyo, who is now 15, continues to work as a servant for the okiya. One evening, Chiyo runs to the dinner her friend is hosting to bring the instrument she forgot and notices that Ken is among the guests. However, when Ken hears a noise and comes outside to check, Chiyo runs away, not ready to meet him yet. A few days later, Mama shows up at the okiya to talk to Mother. She points out that since Granny died, a servant isn't very needed anymore, so she would like to take Chiyo under her wing. She'll cover Chiyo's expenses until her debut, and if in 6 months after her debut Chiyo doesn't pay her debt back, Mama swears to pay Mother twice over. Mother is eager to accept such a deal, but Mama adds one condition. If Chiyo does erase her debt in that amount of time, then mother won't have a part in her future earnings. The Okiya gets Chio ready to be sent back to training, which makes Hatsumomo jealous. Pumpkin is supportive of her friend, but when Hatsumomo notices, she slaps Pumpkin and tells her to stop because Chio is now her rival. From then on, Pumpkin doesn't hang out with Chio anymore. As promised, Mama takes Chio under her wing and teaches her everything there is to know to be a geisha. Chio also gets to meet the Baron, who happens to be Mama's personal patron. Fortunately, Mama has forgiven Chio for ruining her kimono because she knows it was part of Hatsumomo's schemes and treats Chio like a sister. Her lessons include the arts but also the right way to walk and charm men, among other things. The most important rule, however, is that geishas are hosts and entertainers, not courtesans. They don't sell their bodies. Chio does her best to pay attention and learn all the tricks. When she's finally ready, Mama gives her a new name to be reborn as a geisha, Sayuri. Her debut as a geisha comes during a dinner the Baron is having with some friends from the military. Her dance is very well received, but Hatsumomo is there too to throw passive-aggressive comments at her. Sayuri doesn't allow her to put her down and meets sass with sass, embarrassing her in front of everyone. Later in the Okiya, Hatsumomo hits Sori and promises to destroy her. The next day, Mama explains that Hatsumomo will spread rumors and try to steal her clients, so they need to find a way to unwit her. Mama decides to take Sayuri to her first sumo match, where they'll entertain Ken and his business partner Nobu. Sayuri wants to chat with Ken, but Nobu is the boss of the company and the most important catch, which means Mama orders to entertain him instead. Nobu usually doesn't like geishas, but Sayuri manages to impress him with her conversation skills and subtle compliments. Both women leave when Hatsumomo arrives with Pumpkin, not wanting to give them a chance to start another argument. A few days later, Mama gets a plan rolling to undermine Hatsumomo. The first step is for Sayuri to make a wound on her leg so she can be sent to see Dr. Crab. Sayuri is skeptical but follows Mama's orders, and when Dr. Crab sees her bare skin, he's charmed by her beauty. Later, during another dinner with Ken and his business friends, Nobu gives Sayuri a beautiful comb. In return, Sayuri secretly gives Nobu a special box with a rice cake as Mama had previously instructed her to. After dinner, Mama asks Sayuri to give another one of these boxes to Dr. Crab. Sayuri doesn't understand what's going on, so Mama finally explains, these boxes are a way to announce Sayuri's deflowering ceremony is up for sale to the highest bidder. Mama sold hers when she was young too, and she got the highest sum ever paid, 10,000 yen, this helped her pay her debt, and now Sayuri can do the same with her own. However, when they go to see the doctor, he refuses to see them ever again. This doesn't make sense, so when Sayuri returns to the Okiya, she asks Pumpkin if she knows anything about it. At first, Pumpkin refuses to betray her mentor, but eventually, she gives in to honor her old friendship with Sayuri and confesses that Hatsumomo told the doctor that Sayuri's lying and she's already had lovers before. The next day, Sayuri informs Mama of this, but she tells her not to worry because there is still plenty of fish in the sea. The next part of Mama's plan is to make Sayuri the lead in an incoming show, and she even puts up signs all over town to advertise her blue eyes. This makes Hatsumomo furious and never stops calling Sayuri by her old name. The night of the show, all the other geisha dance together in a lovely performance, and afterward, it's Sayuri's turn for her solo presentation. Her performance is captivating and earns her an ovation from the public, including Ken, Nobu, and the doctor. Sayuri becomes the most popular geisha in town and manages to give the box to Dr. Crab after convincing him not to listen to despicable rumors. In fact, she's so popular that the Baron wants him at her estate for his next party. Mama at first refuses, not wanting Sayuri to work without her supervision because of what they do to her, but the Baron makes it a direct order they can't refuse. The day of the party, Sayuri gets to spend some time with Ken and learns he owes Nobu his life. Afterward, the Baron takes her to see his kimono collection, but this is just an excuse to take her into a locked room with him and see her with no clothes on. When Sayuri returns home, Mama is furious because rumors are out and she believes them, so Sayuri's deflowering ceremony may lose value, making her worthless. Sayuri doesn't want to believe she's worthless, even if Hatsumomo keeps making fun of her for it. But later that night, Mama shows up with a huge surprise. She sold Sayuri's deflowering for 15,000 yen, surpassing her own record. This makes Mother decide that Sayuri will inherit the Okiya, which destroys Pumpkin because it had been her dream to be the next madam. Hatsumomo gets furious because she's given it all to this Okiya, but Mother explains she's always known she wouldn't give it to Hatsumomo or her student, because she's a manipulative bastard that would have kicked Mother out as soon as she could, instead of taking care of her as they had done for Granny. After Mother informs Sayuri that she'll have Hatsumomo's big room, Sayuri talks to Mama in private to thank her for everything. Mama explains Dr. Crab won the bid and that Nobu didn't participate because it goes against his principles. The actual highest bidder had been the Baron, but after his behavior, Mama decided to punish him by giving the win to the doctor. This is how she knows Sayuri had been telling the truth about the Baron not having had his way with her after all. Nobody would pay this much for something they had already taken. Mama also admits it was her fault for not protecting her. The night of her deflowering comes more quickly than expected, and Sayuri behaves perfectly through it. When she returns to the Okiya, Sayuri finds Hatsumomo with Ken's handkerchief in her hand. She intends to burn it, so Sayuri jumps on her to stop her, bumping into a lamp in the process and starting a fire. At first, the girls don't notice because they're too busy fighting, but when the flames begin expanding, Sayuri begins crying for help. However, a petty Hatsumomo actually decides to destroy more lamps to make the fire bigger. Hatsumomo escapes the Okiya after that, leaving Sayuri as the house's geisha. At least the building is saved, even if they lose many of their precious kimonos in the fire. There's not much time to rebuild though, because that year the outbreak of World War II happens and the town is warned about incoming attacks. Most people are leaving for Osaka, but Ken knows that is the next target, so with Nobu's approval and resources, he relocates the geishas to safe spaces. Mama is sent to Kameaka as a nurse's aide, and Sayuri is sent to the hills to work for a kimono maker. Years pass and Sayuri is stuck in a routine of hard work and poor meals while the country crumbled in constant battles. It isn't until the war ends that Nobu comes to see her with some news. Mother and auntie escaped safely, but the Baron lost his business and ended things for himself. Ken is working hard in Osaka, but sadly, they've lost their factory as well. Nobu wants to start rebuilding and soon he'll be meeting with an American colonel that has the power to grant them a good contract. He's shown the colonel a picture of Sayuri and he wishes to meet her, so Nobu asks her to become a geisha again to help them get this contract. Sayuri doesn't want to return to that profession, but she can't turn down the request when Nobu mentions it would make Ken happy too. Sayuri returns home only to find things have changed a lot. There are Americans everywhere, and now every streetwalker with a painted face calls themselves a geisha, giving real geishas a bad reputation. When visiting Mama, Sayuri discovers war has changed her as well. She's tired and heartbroken over having lost the Baron, who she had feelings for. She had to sell all her kimonos and jewelry to survive, and now she works renting rooms. But after Sayuri begs for her help, Mama accepts to join her next appointment by wearing the one kimono she did keep, a memory from the day the Baron accepted to become her patron. While staying in town, Sayuri bumps into Pumpkin, who has become an Americanized escort. Sayuri apologizes for what happened years ago, admitting the Okiya should have gone to her, but Pumpkin assures her she isn't angry about it anymore and she has plenty of clients now. Afterward, Mother reopens the Okiya and helps Sayuri become a geisha again with the few accessories they have. The day of the business meeting, Sayuri meets Colonel Derricks, but she also gets to see Ken again. Nobu, Ken, Sayuri, Mama, and Pumpkin travel with the American soldiers to the Amami Islands, where they spend some time in the hot springs. When everyone begins sharing stories, Sayuri tries to tell her tale about the special moment on the bridge, but Ken doesn't allow her to finish. Afterward, Derricks tries to proposition Sayuri, but she turns him down, explaining it's not the geisha way. Nobu sees them from afar and later, he snaps at Sayuri because he's in love with her and doesn't want anybody else to have her. Then he confesses he's in a hurry to rebuild his business because he wants to become her patron. After Nobu leaves her with a threat that he won't be refused, Sayuri goes to see Mama to complain about this situation. However, Mama disappoints her by saying she must accept because she owes Nobu her life. He treats Sayuri gently, and that's more than what any geisha can ever dream for. Sayuri doesn't want to forget about Ken yet though, so she comes up with a plan to scare Nobu away. She finds Pumpkin and asks her for a simple favor, to bring Nobu to the garden at 9 p.m. for a surprise. At that time, Sayuri invites Derricks to her room to get busy with him, that way when Nobu sees them, he'll consider her too dirty for his taste. However, the person Pumpkin brings isn't Nobu but Ken, who leaves as soon as he notices what's going on. At Sayuri's distress, Pumpkin confesses this is her revenge for having had the Okiya stolen from her. In the morning, a hopeless and heartbroken Sayuri throws the handkerchief into the ocean. After a few days, Sayuri goes back to working as a geisha at the Okiya. A very important client wants her to come over to the tea house because he has an offer to be her patron waiting for her, thus Sayuri thinks it must be Nobu. However, when she gets there, she's surprised to find Ken instead. It turns out Ken has always known Sayuri's the little girl from the bridge, and he was the one that sent Mama to tutor her after he saw her night spying on Pumpkin's hosting. Ken has always had feelings for Sayuri, but he never said anything out of respect for his debt to Nobu. Now though, Nobu isn't interested in Sayuri anymore because he's heard about Derricks, so Ken officially asks Sayuri to take him as her patron. Sayuri accepts and the two of them kiss as a sign of their new life together. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.